So, welcome viewers, and you are most welcome to this new lecture on the topic Indian ethos, meaning and sources. So, we have set the agenda for today's discussion on this very particular topic. What do we mean by ethos? And nature of the term ethos. Are there Indian ethos or sources of Indian ethos? How ethos are reflected in Indian life and knowledge, traditions and various traditions of knowledge, and how they are illustrated from real life, or they are used in the real life. So all about the ethos we should discuss about it, what is their origin, how they are different from ethics and so many other dimensions. So we are going to discuss it. What is ethos? The idea comes to our mind. So basically ethos is a Greek driven term. Ethos means custom or character, as originally used by Aristotle, referring to a person's character or personality, especially with respect to a balance between passion and caution. And it also refers to characteristics, spirit, moral nature guiding beliefs and values and dispositions and ethical climate of a person, group, community, organization, or culture, or a society or community, and so on. And then the the local customs, local traditions, or the mores, they all are based on the ethos. In social and rhetorical context, it describes the habitual attitude and moral character and shape behavior, social roles, and public life. So wide definition has been given in the Greek terminology. In the words of Aristotle, it is defined in a very wide sense. So it all concerned with the person's character and the personality and its different dimensions. So Aristotle, what he says about the term ethos. Ethos, pathos and logos are the three classical modes of persuasion that a person can use to speak or write persuasively. Aristotle's concept of ethos, pathos and logos are basically concerned with the rhetorics, and he composed the book Ars Rhetorica, where he defines these three terms in the context of the literature or the writing or the reading. There, ethos regarding the character, it appeals to authority or the appeal to credibility when in the rhetoric, if he is describing it. This is the method in which a person relies on their credibility or character when making an appeal or an argument. Another term what he uses similar to the ethos is the pathos, that is concerned with the emotions. The appeals to emotions. Pathos refers to the method of trying to persuade an audience by eliciting some kind of emotional reactions, and then he uses the term logos, that is concerned with the logic or the reasoning that is reflected in the Nyaya philosophy in Indian context. This appeals to reason. This method involves using facts and logical reasoning to support an argument and persuade an audience. So, implications of the term ethos, you see related terms in English language include ethics, a branch of philosophy dealing with what is morally right or wrong. And then ethology is also the similar term, a branch of knowledge dealing with human character, its formation and evolution. So ethos or ethics, they come from the same root, but it doesn't mean that if you have the rules and regulations all the time, you just bring a yardstick or a parameter and you just try to measure the people on the basis of certain rules and regulation, that is called the ethos or ethics. So that's not possible. That's why some similar terms are also there: principles, norms, standards, ethics, morals, morality. So what do they mean, and how they define the society, how they describe the society, and how they are helpful to form the verificate of the culture and the community and a particular society. So that we all see. Ethics and ethos, because we have just discussed that they come from the same root. So there are certain aspects. On the part of the meaning, we can say that ethics are the set of moral principles that guide what is right, what is wrong. But ethos, the spirit, character or culture of a person or society. On the basis of nature, we can say universal principles or moral rules. Ethics are basically moral rules or universal culture. But ethos, a group or individual's distinctive beliefs and values. Then on the basis of focus, what does it mean? What is the subject matter of the ethics? What one should do ethically, the normative aspects. But while ethos says what one actually believes and practices. Then example, for example, you may understand that telling the truth is an ethical duty. That is the normative aspect, that we should speak the truth. But ethos says being honest and truthful forms part of a person's ethos, because a person already is an honest person or a true person. So ethos belongs to the character in actual what you realize on the part of other person, but ethics what you expect on the part of behavior from the other person. Then again in Indian context, we can have another example, following dharma as a universal moral principle. This is the ethics. But the ethos of Indian culture values humanity, humility, respect for elders, non-violence and submission, and the devotion, the love, compassion, karuna, all such are the ethos based on the Indian culture. Then what are the sources? Philosophy and moral teachings are the sources of ethics. But cultural habits, traditions and behavior patterns are the sources of ethos. Then what's the outcome? Creates moral guidelines. Ethics creates the moral guidelines on the basis of which we make the laws and rules and regulations on the basis of a society runs. Then when we have the ethos, it builds identity and social harmony, because Indian ethos are normally used in the different arenas of life. These days, the ethos from the Bhagavad Gita and the ethos from the Indian traditional sources, ethos from the Indian scriptures, they are being used in the management. Management ethos are also being derived from the Indian knowledge traditions. So, ethics, what is morally right, that's dharma, and ethos, how people live those moral values, that is the achar. Achar Sanhita, that term comes from uh, their source. So, ethics, it is also called the niti or the dharma in Indian context. What does it mean? Ethics in Indian thought refers to the moral principles and codes of conduct that guide human behavior toward righteous dharma. It emphasizes duties, truthfulness, compassion and self-control. And first we discuss the ethics, then we come to the ethos. Then what's the definition? Ethics is the science of right conduct and the art of the achieving good life, Dr. Radhakrishnan says in his book Indian Philosophy. Then what's the Indian view about the ethics? In India, ethics is closely tied to dharma, the moral order that sustains society and the universe. Each person's ethical duty depends on their role, stage of life and ashramas and life, the stages of life, that the four varnashram vyavastha, brahmacharya, from brahmacharya ashram to the sannyas or the vanprastha ashram. So, that is based on that aspects. And then, for example, the Bhagavad Gita teaches ethical actions through nishkama karma, selfless action. And in the same way, you see that in the Jaina philosophies, in Buddhist philosophy, certain other ethical principles are there. But on the other hand, ethos, that is called the achar or sanskar, what you do actually, the action part. In Indian context, meaning is ethos refers to the spirit, value and cultural habits that define a community's identity and moral character. It represents how a society lives and expresses its ethical beliefs. We can define it, ethos is the character or guiding beliefs of a people, culture or community, adapted from Aristotle's rhetoric and application to Indian cultural context. That is because not a single definition is available. We will come to that point, that many definitions are there, many people define in their own way within the purview of Indian knowledge traditions. So, what Indian views are there about ethos? The Indian ethos is shaped by spiritual and philosophical traditions that value harmony, respect for life, humility and collective welfare. That's Sarvodaya. For example, the Indian ethos promotes respect for teachers, guru, that is called guru, elders and natures. The Upanishadic saying that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is a one family, they all expresses the Indian global ethos. Then the term ethos, what are the Indian views? Vedas says the ritual and the cosmic order that maintains harmony, that is the rit, later that is called the dharma. So, there was a concept of the overall system of this universe is run by or controlled by the Varun. Varun was the deity of morality. Then Upanishads and Vedanta, they say the inner contemplative orientation towards self-knowledge, that is Atma, and universal truth, that is the Brahma. And then Purana says that role-based duty, dharma, appropriate to one's station, that is king, household, one's position, you may say, that king, householder or a student. So whatever duty you are performing, accordingly your ethos are defined, your dharma is defined. As a teacher, the Shikshak Dharma; as a Guru, the Guru Dharma; Pita Dharma, Putra Dharma, and so on. Then Buddhist and Jainas says that ethical self-discipline, non-violence like ahimsa, compassion, restraint and liberation-oriented conduct. And certain other ideas are there, that folk traditions and oral tradition, because ethos are not the principles that are absolute in one time period. They go on changing with the passage of time, under the conditions of the society and according to the need of the society. Ethos are always changeable. But in the very essence of Indian culture, because Indian culture is holistic in the nature, it also accepts the changes and it also suggests the further modification as according to the need of the people and time and the society and so on. So in that context, folk traditions and oral culture also define certain ethos. Everyday moral imagination expressed in proverbs, local rituals, festivals and customary norms, they all define the Indian ethos. Then philosophical schools like darshanas, six schools of Indian philosophy, reasoned ethical positions grounded in metaphysics and epistemology. For example, duties arising from understanding self and reality. In the same way, Bhakti and Sufi traditions, they also define the ethos: devotion, centered, egalitarian morality, love, humility, surrender and rejection of empty, ritualism and so on. So these are the different sources how the Indian ethos are defined. So the first point is very important: folk traditions and oral culture, because in our day-to-day life, we just recite the certain proverbs, that is called in Hindi the muhavre. So they all come from the local traditions, local rituals and festivals and customary norms and modes and so on. And they sometimes become the guiding principles in our life, like Atithi Devo Bhava, that comes from the Vedic traditions. In the same way, Athato Dharma Jigyasa, that is, we are curious to know about more about the religion. In the same way, some proverbs in the local language are also very important. Jakora ke saiya, mar sake na koi. So such things are there. They define the Indian ethos and Indian culture. Then modern adaptation, according to the changes in the society and technologies and knowledge expansion and the cultural sublimation and transmission by interaction with cross-cultural traditions, material, archaeological sources and art. Ethos is visible social values encoded in urban planning, inscriptions, iconography and craft traditions. It demonstrates civic priorities like trade, sanitations, temple patronage and symbolic moral orders. It offers empirical evidences of lived values beyond prescriptive text. So accordingly, according to the need of the time, ethos go on changing. For example, in ancient India and medieval period and in even recent past, people did not use to make the toilets in their homes if you go to the rural areas. But nowadays you see that a toilet or the washroom is the culture of the modern urban system, where we have the residents and the flats culture are there, where the attached toilet and bathrooms are very common. So they all just change because the modern adaptation. Statecrafts and pragmatic texts like Arthashastra and other. So ethos, practical ethics of governance, duty of the ruler and real politic, balancing moral ideal with the state needs, emphasizing welfare, order and pragmatic decision making as part of the public ethos. It shows a distinct strand where utilitarian state concerns shape moral norms. Again, modern reformers, nationalist and constitutional discourse are there regarding the uses of ethos or its reformation, reinterpreted traditional values combined with secular, democratic and egalitarian principles. It emphasizes on public service, social reforms, human rights and civic society. Tradition is real, critically and adapted to modern ethical political aims. Then what is Indian ethos? Here comes the main topic, that Indian ethos refers to the characteristic values, attitudes, moral outlook, social habits, worldview and cultural sensibilities that have developed over centuries on the Indian subcontinent. It is not a single doctrine, that point is to be considered. It is not a single doctrine, but a cluster of recurring ethical ideals, spiritual orientations and social practices that shape behavior, institutions and ways of understanding of life since centuries. And with the passage of time, additions may go on adding. Core themes often include duty, that's dharma, harmony, tolerance, reverence for knowledge, community, and a search for the ordering of life that balances the individuals with the social and the spiritual. Then again, certain Indian views on ethos may include the renowned personalities from India, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. He used the word spirit or moral temper of Indian culture, which closely corresponds to ethos. The Indian spirit or ethos is essentially spiritual and ethical. It aims at the realization of truth through right consensus and self-control. He presents his views in his masterpiece, The Hindu View of Life, 1927. The explanation of Radhakrishnan views may be given as Radhakrishnan identifies the ethos of India as rooted in inner discipline, that is tapas, moral living, that is dharma, and the pursuit of truth, that is satya. For him, ethos is the living expression of India's moral and spiritual culture. Again, one of the renowned personalities uh, of Indian spiritual arena, Swami Vivekanand. Vivekanand described India's ethos as grounded in renunciation, service, and universality. The national ethos of India has been spirituality, not in the sense of withdrawal from life, but in seeing the divine in all beings. He explains it, we can explain it for Vivekanand. Ethos means the guiding spirit of Indian civilization, unity of existence, tolerance, and service to humanity. Then Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi often describes the Indian ethos as moral living guided by truth and nonviolence, satya and ahimsa. True civilization consists not in the multiplication of wants, but in the deliberate and voluntary reduction of them. That is the Indian ethos. So Mahatma Gandhi says in Hind Swaraj, that's one of the beautiful books. Um, and here we also find some educational principles and his ideas on education in Hind Swaraj. So we can explain it for Gandhi, ethos means the way of life guided by moral restraint, self-purification and harmony with others, the ethical behavior lived in society. Then Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, he defines the Indian spirit is synthetic and spiritual. It seeks harmony and unity in diversity. And then Aurobindo's idea about Indian ethos is that it lies in integrating material and spiritual life, seeing all existence as a manifestation of the divine. So, certain other sources of Indian ethos are also there. Four Purusharthas, guiding principles of ethos in life, like Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Dharma is the righteousness, moral duty. Artha is the wealth and material aspect, prosperity, and Kama is the desire and pleasures, and Moksha, liberation, and spiritual freedom. So, these are the basis of the four aims of life. They also guide the ethos in life. Some principal Indian ethos may include that truth, Satyamev Jayate, that comes from the Mundakopanishad. The source is given. So you may pause the screen and you may read them out. I am just spelling out the certain principal ethos. Non-violence, that is ahimsa, ahimsa paramo dharma. That also comes from the Mahabharata. That Mahabharata also talks about first about the non-violence, and this beautiful words ahimsa paramo dharma comes from the same book. Then universal brotherhood, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. These are the one important principles of Indian ethos. They also come from the Upanishads, and the ideal that humanity and the world form a single moral community, hospitality and care extend beyond one's immediate group. And again you see selfless duty, work without attachment, Nishkama Karma Yoga. So Bhagavad Gita is also one of the beautiful source of Indian ethos when it says that karmendevadhikaraste mahaphaleshu kadachana. So that means that you have to perform your actions, you don't have to worry about the results, because if you have done your duty with the right intention, then you will achieve the fruits accordingly. So you don't have to worry about it. It's not actually in your hand. The fruits is not in your hand. So that's why Nishkam Karm is expected. That is one of the Indian ethos. Then again recognition of suffering, that is a dukkha, sarvam dukkham. Everywhere there is sorrow. This is the basic principles of Buddhism, that there is the sorrow, there are the reasons of sorrow, and sorrow may be eliminated. That is called the dukkha nirodha. So that's why the Buddhism or the Lord Buddha also suggests how to eliminate that dukkha, and he suggests the Ashtangik Marga. And again, you see self-discipline and the moral restraints, that is the sadhana, tapas. Vedanta also talks about the sadhan chatushtay, the four mechanism how to control your the uncontrolled desires before entering into the acquisition of knowledge traditions, so or the knowledge. So, in the knowledge traditions, there are various mechanisms that first you have to prepare yourself as a seeker of knowledge before entering into. Just take the example of the Prashnopanishad, where the six seekers approached to Rishi Pipalad and they asked the answer of their six questions. But Rishi Pipalad advised them to stay in the ashram for a period of 1 year, and after that he would ask the questions. He could ask the questions, and even Pipalad says that if I know, then I would reply them. So this is the way how the preparation of knowledge is done before directly imparting the knowledge, not or like today's teaching methodology, where the teacher enters into the classroom and he starts teaching without any preparation, without any knowing whether students are interested or not, and what is their mental preparation for the acquisition of knowledge. So, these are the ways of Indian knowledge traditions. We will come to that in some other lectures also. Then another principle of Indian ethos is because when the uh, foreign culture came to India, foreign in the sense that people came to India in the form of sometimes invaders, sometimes traders, but many of the peoples, they settled there, and later generation just born in the Indian culture, Indian tradition. So, cross-cultural element was there, and it is one of the very important contribution to make the composite culture of India. That's why it's pluralistic in nature. So, when Islam came to India, or the Islamic uh, traditions came to India, it also influenced the many traditions, many of the local traditions of India, and also it was also influenced by the uh, local Indian traditions or the spiritual traditions and so on. So, resilience and hope, Quranic or Islamic influence in South Asia, and it also affected the Indian traditions. In Namal Usri Yusra, that is the the statements come from the Quran. It means that indeed with hardship comes ease. This verse is widely quoted in Indian Muslims and South Asian cultural context as a practical ethics of perseverance and hope. It means while facing hardships, maintain faith and persistence, difficulties are accompanied by relief. So that also correlates with the Indian traditions of the Upanishads and the Vedas. They also says that everything is in the hand of God. Karma Siddhanta is there, that nothing is in your hand, everything depends on your right deeds. So when such principles, the saints and rishis and yogis, they find some similarities, they composed and they come together, and that's why Dara Shikoh composed Sirre Akbar and the Majmul Bahrain, and there was a very cordial relation between the yogis and Sufis during the medieval period. We will also come to that in the forthcoming discussions. Then self-respect and self-assertion is moral life. Allama Iqbal, one of the famous Urdu poets, and he also composed the poetry in Persian. He says his principles are sometimes, his philosophical principles are sometimes becomes the basis of Indian ethos in some arenas. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. So that is the principle what Allama Iqbal established on the basis of the Quranic principles. So these are the certain implications, practical implications of the Indian ethos. Now major text and shastras reflecting Indian ethos may be Manusmriti, Chanakya Niti, Vidur Niti, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads and so on, and then Thirukural also, the South Indian text, and then Hitopadesha and Panchtantras, the story books, and the Mahabharata, Shanti Parv and the Anushasan Parv, then Ramayana by Balmiki and the Jataka tales, and also the Vinay Pitaka, Sut Pitaka, the Buddhist literature, Pali canons, and the Naradiya Dharma Sutra, Yagvalkya Smriti, and then Shukra Niti, Kamandaka Niti, Niti Sar, and then Akhlaq-e-Nasiri and Jalaluddin Rumi's Maulana Masnavi, and so many other Sufi texts. So they all collaboratively affected and helped to form the very basis of Indian ethos. The list is very long, time is very short. So last but not the least, you see the most important source of Indian ethos that collaborated all previous sources, and here comes the Indian Constitution, that collects the sources and make a comprehensive system of Indian ethos: truth and righteousness, satya dharma, non-violence and peaceful coexistence, equality and brotherhood, service and social welfare, tolerance and religious freedom, dignity of the individual. You see that they all are reflected in the preamble, in the Article 51A, fundamental duties, and also in the fundamental rights. This is the Indian ethos that gives a preference to the duty before the preference to the rights. It is only Indian ethos throughout the world where we just take care of our duties first, then our rights secondly. So this is the principles of Indian ethos, and Indian Constitution is the ultimate source where all the sources of Indian ethos have been uh, discussed, and they are assembled here, you may say. Then gender, justice, as compassion, and so on. Then concluding remarks, we can say that truth, satya, non-violence, compassion, self-service, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, humility, Vinaya, Tawazu, Khatirdari, and so many other things, they all are the basis of Indian uh, ethos. So these are some suggested readings on your screen. You may go through them in order to understand the deeper idea of Indian ethos. So again, I am leaving you with these beautiful words of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi: raise your words, not voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Thank you very much. God bless you. See you in the next lecture.